Some women don't captivate through striking beauty or exceptional talent. Yet, with a single glance, they become unforgettable, not because of their appearance, but because of something profoundly real, deep, and rare, radiating from within. An energy that cannot be feigned, cannot be replicated. In the lens of Carl Jung, this is a woman who has journeyed through individuation. She no longer lives solely within the roles society has scripted for her: gentle, perfect, dutiful. She has descended into her inner darkness, where fears, wounds, primal desires, and the rejected shadow reside, and she has not turned back. She no longer strives to be loved. She becomes love, not in a saccharine sense, but as a state of complete presence, so authentic that others cannot ignore it. And when a woman reaches this wholeness, she emits 7 unmistakable vibes. These vibrations don't come from makeup, pleasing words, or a polished image. They arise from an awakened inner world, as powerful and profound as a deep ocean. What are these 7 vibes? We are about to step into the terrain where darkness and light merge into one. Some of these vibes may starkly contrast with the ideal woman you once tried to become. But when you linger and listen to vibe number 4, you'll understand why striving to please others only pulls you further from yourself. Are you ready? Vibe 1. A presence that awakens others. Some women don't just enter a room. They pierce through the space like a silent electric current, stirring everyone in quiet reverberation. It's not because she's breathtakingly beautiful or overtly striking, but because something in her energy compels others to pause, to reflect on themselves. Her gaze seems to cut through masks, touching the parts people strive to hide. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This isn't just a psychological warning. It explains the unique sensation carried by women who have walked the path of individuation. They are no longer swayed by unconscious impulses. They have faced their inner darkness, worked through their pain, and untangled the knots in their soul that most choose to ignore. Thus, when you stand before her, you don't just see her. You see a mirror, not a smooth, comforting one like those in the physical world, but a mirror of the soul, where you suddenly glimpse truths you've avoided. You realize you've been pretending. You recognize the loneliness you've been fleeing. You uncover the deepest desires buried under the daily must-dos. She doesn't try to change you, yet her presence silently asks, "Have you truly lived as yourself?" And the terrifying thing is, you know the answer. This energy cannot be memorized or mimicked. It doesn't stem from skills or knowledge. It comes from daring to traverse one's darkness without fleeing. When such a woman speaks with you, she doesn't just hear your words. She hears what you're avoiding. And astonishingly, you begin to hear it too, perhaps for the first time in your life. Imagine a casual conversation. You talk about work, the things you're doing, the people you've met. With others, it might pass as harmless small talk, but with her, a single glance or a simple question like, "Are you truly happy?" leaves you faltering because it strikes the ambiguity you carry. Her presence evokes inner honesty, a quality many have lost in the rush of a performative life. She doesn't try to teach you anything. But near her, you want to live more authentically, not to be accepted, but because you suddenly recall the feeling deep in your heart when you were truly yourself. In Jungian psychology, such a person is often connected with the archetype of the seeker or the wise one. They don't dwell on the surface. They dive deep. They read the truth in the unspoken, which is why they make pretense impossible. On one hand, this can leave others feeling exposed, even unsettled. On the other hand, it creates an inexplicable pull because humans are drawn to truth, especially the truths they haven't dared face. This presence doesn't come from knowing who you are in a rational sense, but from accepting all that you are, beautiful and ugly, light and dark, strong and fragile. Such a woman doesn't need to control others, for she has ceased battling herself. In a world full of masks, someone who no longer hides becomes radiant. You might meet her at a gathering, a meeting, or even in a fleeting glance at a crowded cafe. But even in those brief moments, you'll carry her energy with you, like the aftershock of a quiet wave that has touched your depths. You can't ignore what you felt, nor can you fully return to who you were before. That's why such a presence is so rare, and why, when someone reaches this level of energy, don't they need to hold on to anyone, because no one wants to lose them. Vibe 2, the tamed shadow. If the first energy is a presence that awakens others, the second is one that startles them. Presence alone isn't enough if a shadow still lurks within, ever ready to rise. This woman doesn't merely exist. She has lived with the dangerous parts of herself. In Carl Jung's view, the shadow isn't evil. It's everything we refuse to see about ourselves: suppressed anger, unnamed jealousy, selfishness, shame, feelings of inferiority, all shoved deep into the basement of the psyche and locked away. But what's denied doesn't vanish. It hides in the unconscious, manipulating us from behind the curtain. A woman who has tamed her shadow isn't someone who no longer feels anger. She's someone who has sat with her anger as one would with an abandoned child. She neither lets it drive her into chaos, nor locks it away to maintain a poised facade. She understands the language of her shadow, and thus it no longer controls her. Picture her in an argument. The other person yells, attacks, and tries to dominate. She doesn't retaliate, nor does she passively endure. Instead, her gaze is sharp as a mirror, neither aggressive nor yielding. She fears neither the other person nor the turmoil rising within her. She knows anger isn't the enemy. It's a signal that her boundaries are being crossed, and she knows how to protect those boundaries without losing control. Her shadow is no longer a wild beast caged. It's a wolf walking beside her, trained, loyal, powerful, and keen. You might not see it immediately, but you'll sense the wildness transformed into a quiet strength. And that's what makes others wary, knowing they can no longer play manipulation games with her. Jung believed that when we haven't integrated our shadow, we project it onto others. The more you deny your aggression, the more you're drawn to or provoked by the aggression of others. But a woman who has made peace with her shadow no longer reacts instinctively. She isn't pulled into old scripts. She stands outside the whirlwind that others are caught in, and thus she becomes dangerous in a quiet way. She may smile gently, but you know there were times she wanted to scream. She may be patient, but you sense clearly that if you cross her boundaries, there won't be a second chance. That's what creates an indescribable allure, because no one can truly love you if you haven't faced your darkness. But when you do, your love ceases to be a plea. It becomes a sovereign choice. Such a woman often has a challenging past. She may have rebelled, been consumed by jealousy, or felt weak to the point of madness. But instead of using a facade to erase those unsightly chapters, she learned to continue writing her story without tearing out the early pages. And so, she doesn't say, "I've overcome so much." Her energy itself conveys that this is someone who has fallen, been immersed in chaos, and found her way out with her own hands. If you've ever glimpsed your own shadow, in a burst of anger, a moment of weakness, or a jealousy you dared not name, share that moment. Just to remind each other, every darkness has a path, if we're brave enough not to turn away. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." When a woman becomes conscious of her darkness, she no longer plays the good girl just to be loved, manipulates others for attention, or fears being disliked. She accepts herself as both light and dark, and that truth makes her irreplaceable. Vibe 3. Directed passion. Before taming her shadow, her passion often took the form of an explosion. Wild love, exhaustive work, desires so intense they could destroy. But when she learned to sit with the darkest parts of herself, she also reclaimed the primal energy that once led her astray. That's when her passion began to find its path. Carl Jung called this energy libido, but not in the conventional sense tied to sexuality. For him, libido was the flow of life energy, instinctive, creative, destructive, and regenerative. And when a woman learns to channel it, rather than be swept away by it, she becomes a flame that knows its way. No longer burning herself out or radiating heat aimlessly, she begins to ignite precisely where it matters. Some women are always busy, brimming with ideas, charging forward, yet still feel empty. In contrast, a woman with this vibe doesn't work to escape or chase to prove anything. She acts from a different place, where every passion is anchored to an inner axis, like a wheel with a center, spinning fiercely yet always aligned. Picture her as an arrow in flight, not launched from impatience or the pressure to succeed. She knows where she's going, and more importantly, why. Her energy isn't scattered in competition or proving her worth, because she doesn't need to be the best to feel worthy. She chooses her path, even if it's slower, moving steadily at her own pace. Each step is a conscious choice, not a reaction to the fear of being left behind. This woman may have once been consumed by fiery romances, burned out from pouring her heart into someone else. But instead of repeating the cycle of aimless longing, she began to ask, "Why am I drawn to such people? Where else could this energy go?" And bit by bit, she reclaimed that energy from emotionally draining relationships, gathering it as fuel for herself. She didn't freeze her desires, she reshaped them. Jung believed that undirected libido expresses itself in chaotic ways: obsession, addiction, manipulation, and emotional dependency. But when integrated into the individuation process, it becomes the raw material for creativity, career, and mature love. And that's what you see in her. She doesn't reject passion. She simply doesn't let it drive when she's not sober. You see this energy in women like Oprah Winfrey. Dubbed the queen of all media, no one looking at Oprah today would imagine that behind her success is a girl who was abused, pregnant as a teenager, and deemed hopeless by her own family. She had every reason to remain a victim forever, to give up, to live in resentment, to use her pain as a bargaining chip with life. But Oprah didn't choose victimhood. She created The Oprah Winfrey Show. She reclaimed energy from her past, gathered it into fire, and brought it to television, transforming it into conversations that touched millions, into a career that helped others rise from their darkness. By 2007, at certain moments, she was regarded as the most influential woman in the world. That's not just success. That's libido transformed, passion shaped. At the same time, you might encounter this energy in an ordinary single mother. No television platform, no adoring fans. She sells breakfast at the street corner, not because she has no other choice, but because she's quietly saving every penny to open a free cooking class for the neighborhood kids. No spotlight, no stage. But in every snap of a bread roll, in every glance at the children waiting to eat, you'll sense it. This isn't just a mother making a living. This is a woman living true to her directed passion. This woman may be quiet, but you won't forget her. Because in her, passion is no longer a whirlwind. It's a steady, fierce, purposeful current. It's the kind of energy that not only draws others in, but spurs them to look at themselves. Because if someone can reclaim strength from a place of brokenness, can turn longing into direction, then perhaps you can too. Vibe 4. Knowing who she is. When passion finds direction, she can now be everything without straining to play any role. This is the stage of inner definition, where every action, choice, and presence stems not from fear or expectation, but from an unshakable, non-negotiable understanding. She knows who she is. This isn't surface-level knowing like what she likes, dislikes, or wants from others. It's an understanding from within, like a tree knowing its roots before it blooms. Knowing who she is means no longer living to perform. It's discerning what is her true essence and what she was taught to become. This is what Jung called the separation from the persona, the social mask. And a woman with this vibe is no longer confined by any mask. She doesn't need to be the accomplished woman, the ideal daughter, or the dream lover to feel complete. She can be soft, strong, wrong, silent. All of it is her, with no role left to play. And this shedding unleashes an energy that others can't help but notice, the energy of wholeness within herself. A story shared by a follower of our channel might paint this clearer. She was a team leader at an architecture firm, often labeled cold or unapproachable by new colleagues because she never flattered the boss and always spoke up when something was wrong. She never tried to please anyone. Yet when a project hit a crisis, she was the first to take responsibility for the team, never abandoning anyone, even over a small mistake. And that same woman, initially met with wariness, became the one her team trusted most. Knowing who she is doesn't make her rigid. On the contrary, it makes her more flexible because she is no longer threatened by differences. When you don't need to prove yourself, you have space to truly listen. When you don't need validation, you can live your values every day. Jung said that individuation is the process of pulling the ego away from the collective values it once identified with. A woman with this vibe has passed through the breaking of the old ego, and though it may have been painful or disorienting, she emerged with a version of herself that doesn't need acceptance to know she's worthy of existing. Before moving on, take a quiet moment. Breathe slowly. I want you to pause and answer this. Right now, are you living as yourself or as a version the world suggested you should be? Write it down, or just say it in your mind, because sometimes being honest with yourself doesn't need witnesses, only the courage to admit it. Knowing who she is also means she knows her boundaries, and no one can negotiate them. She doesn't need to argue to be respected. When she stands, looks at you, and says, "I don't accept that," it's enough for you to understand. This isn't someone who will bend to please. And perhaps the strangest thing about a woman who knows who she is how life begins to respond to her differently. Jung called this a meaningful coincidence. No longer blind chance, but the world's natural reaction to a clear essence. When you know who you are, you stop chasing every opportunity, and you choose only what aligns with the energy you embody. Not every opportunity is lucky. Not everyone who comes should stay. She knows what drains her and what brings her alive. Knowing this, she stops investing in what doesn't resonate, not out of harshness, but because she understands the value of alignment. And when you stop compromising with what's out of tune, you begin to attract the right people, moments, and opportunities. An invitation arrives just after you disconnect from an old space. A companion appears when you stop playing the needy role. An opportunity opens days after you dare to let go of something misaligned. These things can't be forced. They come only when you've become the frequency that matches them. Conversely, if you continue to attract toxic relationships, draining jobs, or exhausting cycles, pause and ask, whose life am I living? You might be operating from a borrowed ego, a version built to please others, and the world is simply reflecting that. If you've ever doubted, imitated, or contorted yourself to fit expectations for approval, meeting this woman will remind you what it feels like to live as yourself. And perhaps you'll wonder, if she can be so fully herself, can I? Vibe 5. Deep emotion, neither manipulating nor avoiding. When a woman truly knows who she is, she no longer suppresses her emotions to maintain an image, nor does she let them take the wheel and drag her along. If once she shed tears to hold on to someone, now she may still cry, but not as someone losing herself. In the modern world, emotions are often treated as a weakness or a currency for exchange. We learn to seem fine while crumbling inside. Or, conversely, we wield tears, sulking, or prolonged silence as subtle weapons to make others feel guilty, fear losing us, or believe we deserve more love. But a woman with this vibe no longer needs such tactics. She has learned to feel without swallowing, to face without clinging, to express without performing. Carl Jung said, "Emotion is the chief source of consciousness. There is no change from darkness to light or from inertia to movement without emotion. Emotions are the raw material of awakening." She understands that every surge of anger, every pang of sadness, every twinge of jealousy isn't a problem to extinguish, but a signal from a deeper layer of the unconscious, where unmet needs knock at the door. She doesn't rush to react. She pauses, listens, and responds with maturity rather than a defensive reflex. Imagine you're in a relationship and your partner unintentionally hurts you. Most people fall into two patterns: silent resentment, waiting for the other to notice their fault, or an outburst, feeling abandoned or undervalued. But she might say something simple, without blame. "That made me feel disrespected." A viral video from an emotional education workshop for children captures a moment that silenced an entire room. A divorced elementary school teacher spoke to her 8-year-old son. "Mommy's sad, but it's not your fault. You don't need to cheer up to make me feel better. Emotions aren't scary, they're just passing through." A simple sentence, yet it carries immense psychological power. She wasn't just comforting her child, she was breaking an unconscious generational chain, the kind that teaches children to endure well, or worse, to be responsible for adults' emotions. With those words, she planted a lesson many adults still haven't learned. Emotions are for feeling, not for imprisoning. This woman might cry in a meeting if something touches her heart. But her tears aren't weak. They're powerful. They aren't meant to persuade, fix, or elicit pity. They're simply life, flowing out and settling again, light as a passing rain. She might feel anger, but won't lash out or blame others. She knows her anger has a source, and instead of letting it wound, she traces it back and heals where it began. Jung believed that someone who can fully face their emotions, neither controlled by them nor denying them, becomes a stable center amid life's chaotic whirlwinds. That's this woman. Her depth doesn't come from reading many books, but from sitting long enough in her emotional darkness without fleeing. And so, when you're near her, you feel something strange. You're allowed to feel. No judgment, no dismissal, no urging to be positive, just the simple permission to be with what is. You see, not every deep person is pensive, philosophical, or poetic. Some are deep because they don't fear feeling. And because of that, they don't need to make a spectacle. They simply exist, and others naturally feel safe to be honest. That's a rare vibe. It can't be learned. It can't be faked. It emerges only when you stop fighting your emotions and start listening to their call. And when a woman has done this, she no longer relies on others' love to feel worthy. Because deep within, every emotion is allowed to exist, to be understood, and to be held with the love she gives herself. Vibe 6, Archetypal Wisdom. There's a kind of wisdom that doesn't ring out in words, isn't found in degrees, and doesn't show up in right or wrong debates. It's a wisdom that can't be taught, only lived. And when a woman has learned to stay with herself, even in her most chaotic moments, this wisdom begins to rise from within. Carl Jung called it archetypal wisdom, knowledge accumulated through thousands of years of human spiritual evolution, residing in the collective unconscious and emerging through primal images like the mother, the goddess, the healer, the warrior, the witch. These aren't roles she chooses, but ancient energy streams she connects with when she releases her ego and touches her true essence. This isn't the wisdom of being understanding or reading people to control situations. It's a profound, sharp intuition that lets her see the essence of an issue, even when those involved are still in the fog. People listen to her not because she speaks much, but because they sense she's voicing something within them, something they haven't yet named, but know is true. I once knew such a woman. She worked as a cook in a small eatery on the city's outskirts. Standing daily by a steaming pot of broth, she was ordinary, unremarkable. But once after I visited following a confusing decision to quit my job, she didn't pry with questions. After hearing a few sentences, she gently placed her hand on my shoulder. What's true will come back. What's not real, no matter how hard you hold on, will slip away. I didn't know whether to cry or stay silent, because I knew she wasn't speaking from a place of mere comfort. She spoke from a place of having been there, having understood, without needing to explain. I still recall that afternoon, amid the steam of pho and the clatter of pots. She said nothing more, just chopped vegetables and ladled broth. But the air around me had shifted. Sometimes wisdom doesn't need explanation, it just needs to be witnessed. Archetypal wisdom doesn't crave recognition, it radiates naturally. You see it in the single mother raising her child with clear-eyed resilience, free of resentment. In the eldest sister, who stays silent during family arguments, but, when she speaks, makes the room pause. In the quiet friend whose advice hits so deeply, it leaves you stunned. She doesn't need to win arguments, because she doesn't use wisdom to prove herself right. She uses it to light the way, for herself, and sometimes, unintentionally for others. Her presence shifts the atmosphere. You find yourself softening your tone, thinking more carefully, being more honest, because she reminds you, you can live more deeply than this. Jung believed archetypes don't think, they operate. That's why this woman doesn't need to justify her actions or choices. She lives with the fullness of honed intuition, neither impulsive nor rigidly rational. And you'll notice, her every decision carries the precision of someone who knows exactly where she stands in the larger tapestry. And when you're near her, you don't want to become like her. You want to come closer to yourself. Because the most beautiful thing about a woman with archetypal wisdom isn't in her. It's in the part of you she touches. The part you've always known was there, just waiting to be awakened. She doesn't just live in the present. She senses the undercurrent of everything unfolding. A small conversation carries depth. A conflict can be a psychological turning point. She doesn't dwell on the surface. And when you're near her, you can't stay on the surface for long either. That's the profound beauty of a woman connected to her inner archetypes. She doesn't make others admire her. She makes them want to dive deeper into themselves. Because you sense, if she can access that, perhaps you can too. Vibe 7, a mirror. Not for admiration, but for seeing oneself. When a woman has connected with the archetypal wisdom within, she no longer needs to say, "I've grown, I've healed," or "I'm whole." She doesn't need to prove anything. Her very presence becomes a mirror, not for others to gaze into with admiration, but for each person standing before her to begin seeing themselves. This is the final vibe, and the most subtle. It's not as vivid as passion, not as sharp as wisdom, not as jolting as tamed pain. It manifests in how others react in her presence. Some feel healed, some feel triggered. Some find her magnetic, yet can't say why. Others avoid her because not everyone is ready to face themselves. Carl Jung said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." A woman with this vibe is a catalyst for transformation without intervening. Simply by being there, she prompts you to look at yourself, sometimes with awe, sometimes with discomfort, but never with indifference. Because she doesn't play roles or wear labels. She simply lives authentically. And that authenticity stirs what's inauthentic within you. Sometimes, her presence doesn't need to be loud. It might be in a fleeting moment when you see her guiding her bike past, quietly picking a fallen leaf off a step. A small act, yet it makes you wonder, how have I been present in my day? She doesn't try to inspire. She doesn't quote profound sayings or perform a desirable life. She lives her own, sometimes quietly, even humbly. But when you're near her, you want to stand taller, speak truer, live kinder. Not because she demands change, but because her integrity leaves you no reason to pretend. I once knew such a woman, not famous, not a meditation teacher, not spiritual in the usual sense. She was a receptionist at a small therapy center, always in a simple blouse, hair neatly tied, soft-spoken. Few noticed her. But once I saw her step out from the break room, where a client had just sobbed through a session that unearthed painful memories. She didn't offer comforting words. She simply placed a glass of water down, handed over a tissue, and stood there. No rush, no avoidance, just still. The way she stood, it was as if she were lending the other person a piece of her steadiness, without needing a single word. After that, I observed her more. The way she greeted each person, never carelessly. The way she listened to someone finish their sentence, never interrupting, never rushing to respond, as if every person, every moment, deserved to be fully present. Once I asked her, "Have you ever taken healing courses?" She smiled faintly and said, "No. I just try to be truly present in the small things, because for too long I wasn't present with myself." Her answer left me speechless. It voiced something I hadn't dared admit. I was still often running from myself, even while talking about awakening. She didn't change me with advice or influence, but by living true to herself, she made me pause, reflect, and remember the deepest part of me, where gentleness, listening, and truth still waited to be named. A woman with this vibe doesn't draw you in with her allure, but with how she makes you feel about yourself in her presence. If you're on a path of growth, you'll find motivation. If you're avoiding something, you'll feel unease. But either way, she doesn't try to change you. She doesn't try to heal anyone. She knows everyone must face their mirror, but only when they're ready. Jung said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people." And that's what makes her mirror unique. It's not coated with sweet words or cushioned with indulgence. It's a true mirror, reflecting exactly what you carry, even the parts you don't want to see. Not to judge, but to help you pause and ask, "How am I living?" And so, not everyone can stay with her. Some will leave, saying she's too cold, hard to understand. But the truth is, she's not hard to understand. They're just not ready to understand themselves. She doesn't try to stay, doesn't beg to be kept, because she knows those who can stay with her must first be able to stay with themselves. And you know, a woman like this always leaves a mark, not in memory, but in the soul. Like a seed awakened, like a barren patch within you that suddenly wants to crack open. Because, in the end, she doesn't give you anything new. She simply helps you remember something old, true, and always within you. You might have thought becoming a whole woman meant learning to be strong, always knowing what you want and acting decisively. But the women we've journeyed with here show the opposite. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present with yourself truly. There's no certificate for inner growth. There's no finish line for becoming yourself. Some days you'll feel steady, others like you're back at the start. But every time you keep going, dare to sit with a seemingly small emotion. Dare to ask yourself honest questions. You're inching closer to a wholeness no one can take away. And maybe right now you don't feel you've touched these vibes yet. That's okay. The most precious thing isn't where you are on the journey, but that you're walking, waking up from the dream others painted for you, returning to your original self. Because the most beautiful thing about a woman isn't that she's completed her individuation journey, but that she has the courage not to turn away from it. And you, reading this far, are likely amid such a journey, whether you know it or not. If these words have touched you, leave a sign to let me know you're there. A heart, a subscription, or share this with a woman you believe is also walking the path back to herself. Because perhaps you are the quiet mirror helping someone pause and remember they deserve to live truthfully. In a world where women are praised for being considerate, strong, capable, and always proper, there are wounds silently nurtured within those very compliments. No one intended to hurt her, but in the effort to become right, she had to bury many vibrant parts of herself. Carl Jung said that every part of us that is rejected does not disappear. It sinks down and controls us from the shadows. There are women who believe they are living very well, until one day they realize they have only been playing a role. And if you have ever been that woman, straining to be sweet, to be worthy, to avoid rejection, then this message is for you. In this video, I will walk with you through the 7 deepest wounds that women often carry within, wounds that have silently shaped their personality, behaviors, love patterns, ways of reacting, and even how they treat themselves. This is not an easy journey, but if you are brave enough to look inward, perhaps you will no longer live as an acceptable version of yourself, but begin to live as who you truly are. Real, enough, whole. Are you ready to take this journey? Number 1. The wound of the good child, when she learns to bury her true self to be loved. There are wounds that do not mark the skin but are deeply imprinted into the mind. No one sees blood, there is no crying, no complaints. Yet they exist, in the form of a perfectly measured smile, words that are always pleasant, eyes that dare not reveal true emotions. And that is the wound of a woman who was once a good little girl, too good to dare to live as herself. From an early age, that girl learned the unspoken rules of love. To be kept, you must please. You must know when to smile, when to be silent. You must understand that anger is rude, sadness is bothersome, and passion is acceptable only if it does not make anyone uncomfortable. In everyone's eyes, she was the model child, rarely causing trouble, always considerate, so good that everyone loves her. But deep inside, she had lost something precious, the right to be herself. Carl Jung called that protective layer the persona, the social mask we wear to survive in a world full of expectations. And the first mask she wore, not because she wanted to, but because she had to, was the mask of the good child. At first, it was like a protective cloak. When she made others happy, she was loved. When she suppressed her anger, she was praised. When she held back tears, she was rewarded with her mother's smile, her father's approving gaze. But over the years, that cloak became shackles. It was no longer something she chose to wear, but something she could not take off. She grew into the beloved woman. Everyone liked her. She caused no trouble, was never unpredictable, never demanding. But because of that, no one truly saw her. She began to doubt. Did anyone actually love her? Or did they only love the comfort she brought? If she stopped pleasing others, who would stay? I once heard a woman say that as a child, she loved to sing. Whenever she was alone, she would hum for hours. But one day, an adult remarked, "What kind of girl is so noisy?" That comment was like an invisible knife. She stopped singing that very day. No one forbade her, but she understood implicitly. Her true voice was not welcome. From then on, that child lived with a proper voice, moderate emotions, and acceptable behavior. But at night, within four walls, she felt empty, as if she was just a mannequin dressed in other people's expectations. Imagine her soul as an old mansion, originally designed with many colorful rooms, each reflecting a vibrant part of her essence. A room of curiosity, a room of fierceness, a room hiding wild dreams, a room holding tears unseen by anyone. But gradually, each room was locked. Some are locked from the outside by criticism, some locked from the inside by her own fear of rejection. In the end, only one main room remained, bright, tidy, safe, where she hosted guests, where she lived the acceptable life. But the rest of the house, abandoned, dusty, still waited to be opened. That is what the persona brings, conditional safety. You are loved, as long as you are not too different. You are kept, as long as you please. But you are no longer you. And that is the real wound. You trade your true self for incomplete love. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But for that woman, that privilege was never given, because from very early on, she was taught that her real self was something to hide, not something to live. So healing does not come from becoming stronger, more perfect, or more lovable. It comes from the moment she begins to doubt the mask she once took pride in. From the first question, if I stopped trying to please, who would I be? At first, those questions are hard. They shake everything she carefully built. But little by little, she begins to clean her inner house. She reopens a small room where old dreams were locked away. She finds her voice again, trembling at first, but growing clearer. And then, one afternoon, she stops, looks in the mirror, without makeup, without a polite expression, and for the first time in years, she realizes, this is really me. And she cries, not out of sadness, but because, for the first time, she feels light. No more straining, no more acting, no need to be the sweet girl. She just needs to be herself. If you have ever been that woman, folding yourself to fit into others' hearts, living just to be kept, ask yourself, what have I traded away just to be loved? And if today you want to take it back, leave a sign, a word like real, a small symbol, as a silent vow. I am returning to myself, because you are not alone, and you deserve to be loved without having to be good. Number 2. The wound of the woman who must be strong when she believes weakness is a sin. When a woman begins to remove the obedient mask, she not only touches her true emotions, she also touches something that had once been labeled as weakness. And that is when another wound surfaces. The wound of the woman who must be strong, an armor that seems protective, but in truth has left her lonely in her own life. Some women grow up not to be gentle, but to endure. No one taught them how to be weak safely. No one held their tears as something sacred to be listened to. So they learned to swallow them down. She once cried, but was scolded for being a crybaby. She once felt afraid, but was urged to be strong. She once needed a shoulder, but was taught that leaning on others was foolish. Gradually, she stopped crying, stopped asking for help, stopped allowing herself to collapse. She became the woman everyone called resilient, someone who needs no one. But no one knew that behind that independent facade was a heart always taut like a guitar string, always braced, always telling herself, "I must be okay." Because if she wasn't, who would hold her? Carl Jung once said, "Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries." And the part she had tried to deny was her own softness, the part that wanted to lean, the part that knew exhaustion, the part that needed soothing, not because she was weak, but because she was human. In Jungian psychology, that softer part belongs to the anima, the feminine aspect within, the place where emotion, connection, and intuition live. When the anima is repressed, a woman no longer allows herself to feel, only to endure. She thinks she is in control of everything, but is actually losing the deepest part of what makes her herself. I once met such a woman. She was a manager, raising 2 children alone, busy from morning until night, working, caring for her kids, juggling countless responsibilities. Everyone looked at her with admiration. But one evening, when there were no phone calls, no children's footsteps, she quietly said, "Sometimes I just want someone to genuinely ask, 'Are you okay today?' And if I shake my head, that person wouldn't tell me to be strong, wouldn't try to fix anything, just sit there beside me." Her voice was gentle, without blame, but in her eyes was a silent weariness, not from work, but from having gone too long without allowing herself to soften. This wound is not easy to spot. It hides under a polished exterior, under the familiar phrase, "It's fine, I'm okay." But at night, she lies still for a long time, not because she is physically exhausted, but because inside, there is no one she can collapse into. She once believed that strength meant never being weak, but true strength began when she admitted she was tired. Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself fully, the soft parts, the wounded parts, the insecure parts, the parts she once hid." But it is from there that healing begins. When that woman began to return to her anima, the soft feminine side that had been suppressed, she did not become weaker. She became fuller. She did not have to give up strength, only stopped using it as a wall. She could take care of herself, but also lean on someone safe when weary. She remained steady, but was unafraid to soften in someone's arms. And the precious thing was, she no longer felt ashamed of it. Because in the end, strength is not about never falling, but being able to rise from where you have fallen, with a gentler heart and kindness toward yourself. If you have ever been that woman, always seeming fine, always used to bracing alone, perhaps you've forgotten, weariness is also a signal worth listening to. And if today you truly feel tired, pause for a moment. Not to be weak, but to breathe. Not to give up, but to remind yourself. You also deserve gentleness from yourself. You can take off your shoes when your feet are blistered. You can sit down when the journey is too long. And you can set down the armor for a while, not because you're weak, but because you are brave enough to not have to brace anymore. Because sometimes the most courageous thing a woman can do is admit she too needs shelter. Number 3, the wound of carrying expectations, when she lives to be worthy, not to be real. Wounds don't always take the form of rejection. Sometimes they wear the thin, light veil of expectation, so delicate, so transparent that it seems harmless. But precisely because of that, it seeps into the skin more easily than any criticism. And the woman unconsciously has learned to wrap that veil around herself as an honor until she loses herself without realizing it. She was never forced, never openly denied, but she grew up in an atmosphere that quietly said, "You must be accomplished to deserve what you have." And so, she embarked on a relentless journey, not out of passion, but out of fear of not being good enough. She lived as if always under a watchful eye, not a critical eye, but an expectant one. And that gaze can sometimes be more pressuring than judgment. She might be accomplished, well-liked, a model mother, a dedicated employee, but in those rare, quiet moments when no one sees her, she feels empty. No matter how many standards she meets, she still doesn't feel like she is truly living. She is only playing her role. From early on, she was taught that her worth was tied to being worthy, worthy of love, of trust, of her place. She studied hard to ease her parents' minds, lived virtuously to avoid judgment, grew up early so no one had to worry about her, but no one ever asked her if she wanted to live this way. Carl Jung once said, "A man is understood only to the extent that he understands himself." But this woman never had the chance to understand herself. She lived by what was praised. She checked each day to see if she was good enough, rather than ask if she was truly happy. I think of Esther Greenwood, the protagonist in Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar. Esther was intelligent, full of promise, admired by society. But gradually, she felt as though she was trapped under an invisible glass bell. No one could hear her true voice. No one saw she was suffocating. She lived to deserve everything except herself. Many women live in that glass bell. They do not collapse, but they have never breathed deeply. They smile on cue, are gentle on standard, successful just enough, yet still feel something is missing. Because when you live to be worthy, you will always feel you are not enough. That enough is never set by you. In psychology, this is a sign of being disconnected from the self, when the true self is replaced by idealized images. She does not live from her own center, but from the eyes of others. She exists only when acknowledged, and that draws her farther from herself. She may look back on a relationship and not know how she truly loved, because she loved to be chosen. She may look at her career and not find passion, because she chose it to please someone. She may look in the mirror and no longer recognize the face, because it wears too many expectations. The danger is not living wrongly, but living too rightly to a mold that was never hers. Healing here does not come from rebellion or abandoning everything. It comes from the moment she dares to ask, "If I no longer had to prove anything, who would I be?" That question is not easy to answer, but it is the first threshold. She begins to slow down, does something with no value just because she enjoys it, misses an appointment, stays home to read, because she doesn't want to pretend to be fine. She stops trying to be interesting, approachable, and exceptional. She just is present. And strangely, the moment she stops straining to be worthy, people start to feel the depth within her. Because worthiness does not come from a role, but from honesty. And she is learning that again, piece by piece. If you have ever been that woman, trying so no one would be disappointed, living as if in a competition without knowing your opponent, maybe now is the time to step off that track. Not because you lost, but because you've realized You never needed to compete to be yourself. Among hundreds of women striving for recognition, only a few are brave enough to ask, "If I no longer had to prove anything, who would I be?" If you are one of them, leave the symbol as a gentle sign that you are flying out of the invisible cage of expectation, returning to yourself. Number 4. The wound of reflection. When she carries someone else's shadow thinking it's her own. Even after a woman has gradually released the need to be worthy, there is still something else